Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. He's Jim Salisbury. I'm Corey Seidman, and the Phillies are in first place, 2 games ahead of the Braves, 2.5 ahead of the Mets to start the week. They just finished off a very impressive 3-game sweep of the Mets and have their longest winning streak in nearly a decade at 8 straight games. Jim, this team's on fire. They're playing up to their potential, and I mean, this is the kind of baseball that we just didn't see really until the month of August began.
Yeah, it's been a really amazingly quick turnaround. When the division is so tightly packed, things can happen in a hurry. We've been talking all year about how, yes, the division has its problems. It's not, overflowing with great teams, but nonetheless, somebody's going to win it. Somebody's going to get hot and win it. Right now, with 50 games to go, the Phillies are very, very hot. It's funny. We were talking a week ago Saturday, after that first game and the night of the trade deadline, that first game in Pittsburgh, when they looked awful. They looked disinterested. They didn't hit, and they didn't play well again on Saturday. But since that Sunday game in Pittsburgh, like you said, 8 in a row, and they've erased. They were down, 4.5 in the division, and now they're up 2 on the Braves, up 2.5 on the Mets, who they trailed by 4.5, 8 days ago. Just amazing. The Mets are just not hitting. It's funny. You were at Sunday's game. I was actually driving back from a wedding in New England, listening to the Mets game on the Mets radio network. They're just marveling at how good Zach Wheeler was and marveling at how he would look good in a Mets uniform. And, oh, by the way, how he was in a Mets uniform. They let him get away and actually made reference to the former GM, Brodie Van Wagenen, not thinking he was worth that type of contract. But, boy, has he been great for the Phillies ever since arriving, as you are articulated today. In story form on our website, he's right there for the Cy Young. But what a memorable day at the ballpark Sunday, huh?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many subplots between the Phillies continuing their streak and Wheeler pitching like that against his old team, and obviously, I mean, seeming to like channel Roy Halladay. Joe Girardi made a comment after the game. Joe Girardi got emotional, choked up in his post-game press conference, and said that it looked like Roy had his hand on Zach out there. As he was just dominating the Mets. Jim, you mentioned the Brodie Van Wagenen comment from two years ago when the Phillies signed Zach Wheeler. His comment was something like that, good for Wheeler. He parlayed 2 half seasons into an $118 million contract. Well, to this point, I looked this up this morning. Fangraphs has a metric that converts a player's wins above replacement, his WAR, to a dollar figure, right? So to this point, because of the prorated salaries last year in the shortened season, to this point, Wheeler's only made about $26 million as a Philly. And according to Fangraphs, over these 1.5 seasons, he's been worth $60.9 million. So he seems to be outperforming that contract. And I think what's just so impressive about Wheeler is that he maintains the fastball velocity. It's not like he's 99 in the first inning and it's down to the mid-90s by the end of the game. He averages 97 miles per hour in every inning that he pitches. And, I mean, that feels especially notable given what we just saw with Spencer Howard before he was traded, that he couldn't maintain that velocity. It takes, a different breed of cat to do that.
It is. And it's notable given, I think, what we saw about a month ago when MLB, cracked down on the use of the sticky stuff. And we saw a lot of guys' performances nosedive a little bit. Spin rates come down, and with that, movement and velocity and all those other things are affected. But he's been amazingly consistent. He's big. He's a big guy who's finally got healthy, finally got comfortable as a pitcher. And what strikes me about him is his mechanics are so pure, and he's not high effort. And he's very much like DeGrom in that, they're both tall and they get a lot of downward angle on the ball, which is something we don't hear a lot of anymore. I used to hear about that all the time, how valuable downward plane and downward angle was. But now with so many pitchers combating launch high in the zone by pitching up in the zone, we don't hear about that as much anymore. And Wheeler's a guy who can go to town on you up in the strike zone, but he's also a guy, much like DeGrom, who will command that power fastball glove side, down it into a lefty, down and away to a righty, glove side with the power fastball. And that slider, which has been a big pitch for him, always was a big pitch for DeGrom. So, yeah, he's just having a tremendous year. He's a real professional guy, goes about his business very professionally, quietly. I mean, you just know you're going to get you kind of know you're going to get a great one from him every time out. It's been a great signing by Matt Klentak, by ownership, but they targeted him quickly in that offseason and went after him quickly. At the time, we were like, that's a lot of money, but like you said, worth every penny of it. You've mentioned a number of times how, look at the money the Yankees paid for Garrett Cole. Look at the money the Phillies paid for Zach Wheeler in the same offseason. And who are you getting more bang for your buck from?
Yeah, Cole signed for almost 3 times as much as Wheeler. So, the Phillies lead the division here by 2 games over the Braves, 2.5 over the Mets with 50 to go. That's not a huge lead, but they're playing the best baseball of those 3 teams. Who do you think is the biggest threat to the Phillies the rest of the way, Braves or Mets?
Well, I honestly think they're both threats. And I know some people are writing off the Mets. And to me, they're a different team without DeGrom. We don't know when he's going to get back. The Mets they've struggled offensively all season. And in particular, they've struggled even more so lately. It's just been terrible. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to have these much offensive woes over the final 7 weeks of the season, but I guess it's possible. But I still think they could put something together. I think it's going to be difficult without DeGrom. If they could turn things around, I would say, them and the Braves are both threats. Maybe the Braves, probably the Braves a little bit more of a threat, though they've been hit hard by injury, especially with losing Ronald Acuna, who was, strong MVP candidate before he went down. They have a really aggressive front office and went out and addressed some holes. They remade their outfield. They got power on that team. They certainly have ability to be very, very dangerous. I still look at it though as a 3-team race. A 2-game lead over Atlanta is nothing. A 2.5 game lead over the Braves is nothing. What it does though, it puts you in the driver's seat where you have the very valuable reality of controlling your own destiny. And that means a lot. I think that means a lot. You're not relying on looking at the other guy on the scoreboard every night. You take care of business yourself, pitch the way you can, pitch the way they have, get some improved defense that they have had some improved defense. I think since the break, sure. Some blips here and there, but and continue to, ride Harper. You got to get Hoskins back healthy because he's a force. I know he's had 2 prolonged slumps this season. He's still a force. What he does for this team, what he brings to this team. And though Gene Segura, I think, has been overshadowed by Harper lately, his ability to get timely hits and big hits at crucial stages of the game cannot be ignored, whether he's leading off games or getting big hits late. So with all those factors, Phillies are in a really nice spot being in the driver's seat with 50 games to play. I would think their confidence is high. That means a lot. The fans have been backing them the last handful of games here at the stadium. That means a lot. You got a guy like Harper who I think feeds off emotion, and you put the fans in the seats, and he rides that emotion. He has the ability to really kind of carry a team like he has since the break. I mean, he's a serious MVP candidate now. And one thing I've said since he's been here, I said this last year, and I said this again this year, I'm sure you'll remember on our podcast, I always thought if he finishes in the top 5 of the MVP voting, they'll make the playoffs because that's the type of year he could have. And, if he continues this, I think they can get there.
Yeah, Bryce Harper certainly feeds off the crowd, and the crowds this weekend were just unbelievable. I mean, it reminded you of 10 years ago when the Phillies were at their peak, when they were drawing 40,000 fans a night, and those were throaty fans who were into it on every single pitch. That's the way it was this weekend. And it wasn't because the Mets were in town and there were a bunch of Mets fans. I mean, there were a bunch of Mets fans, but it was also a large percentage of fans cheering for the home crowd. It's funny, Brad Miller said that over the weekend he was talking to Ian Kennedy, and Ian Kennedy was just like, wow, this is awesome. Someone like Ian Kennedy, Kyle Gibson, they probably think it's like this every day here because they've only known winning since they became Phillies at the trade deadline. Speaking of great teams, Team Toyota is leading the way with their new and pre-owned Toyotas right now. Their process is fast, easy, and it puts you in control the whole way. Just check out the reviews online. With locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, and Princeton, visit teamtoyota.net and be safe, be strong, be a team. You know, the Phillies are getting contributions 1 through 26 right now. It's the guys at the top of the roster like Harper and Wheeler and Real Muto who are really hot. But it's also the fact that throughout these injuries, they've been able to go to someone like Brad Miller, who had a multi-homer game over the weekend. And they've been able to turn Ronald Torreyes into like a semi-regular. And Travis Jankowski continues to play a solid center field. It, again, reminds you of that 5-year period from 07 to 11, where the Phillies had productive benches between Greg Dobbs and Ross Glode, guys like that, different players filling roles. And you know, the Phillies bench in recent years has kind of been neglected. That's not the case this year. They have a bunch of professionals.
Well, you mentioned 2 of them, or 3 of them, really. Brad Miller, I thought if it's amazing now the Phillies are in first place and everybody's pumped up and jacked up about the Phillies. Well, 10, 12 days ago, we were talking about should they sell off some pieces. And I thought Brad Miller, because he is, as you mentioned, such a good bench player, productive bat off the bench, gives you a good at bat and can knock one over the wall, as we've seen. Really, I thought he could have been very attractive to a contending team off the bench if the Phillies went the other way. Obviously, he's still very attractive to a contending team off the bench. That team, in fact, is the Phillies. But yeah, Torreyes, I don't know where you'd be without him. And Jankowski, I mentioned how professional Zach Wheeler is. I get the same vibe out of Jankowski in his role. He really knows his role. He performs it well. He plays good defense, gives you a good at bat, brings some energy. Been a really, really nice pickup, and he's been a nice addition since he came up to that bench. He had that tough first night when he got picked off second, but that happens. That happens when you're trying to make something happen. And he has totally rebounded and done a good job. And Ronald Torreyes has done a great job. And we'll see what happens when Freddie Galvis gets or becomes active here in the next probably week or so. I'm sure he'll definitely help the bench and possibly even more. Possibly even a greater role than that as they look to clamp down some defensive shortcomings on the left side of the infield. Not sure how that's going to play out, but I'll tell you what, when you have a lead in a ball game and in a race, you better make plays. You better make plays if you want to keep that lead,
Yeah, so over the weekend, the Mets did not lead the Phillies at any point in that series. And we've talked so much over the last 2 years about blown leads because the Phillies led the majors in blown leads in 2020, and we're shaping up to do the same here in 2021. But over the last 6 weeks, they've kind of developed a better late inning formula, and it's because 2 crucial members of the bullpen, Archie Bradley and Hector Neris, have been locked in. They're pitching at their very best. And, right now it kind of looks like a 7th, 8th, 9th combination of Neris, Bradley, and new closer Ian Kennedy. Neris had an appearance over the weekend where he pitched 2 scoreless innings to bridge the gap when Ranger Suarez was only able to go 2 2/3. So, this team would not, the vibes would not be as positive right now if the Phillies bullpen had not rounded into form as well.
No, because you lose games late, your bullpen starts coughing up leads. It's incredibly demoralizing on a clubhouse and a fan base. You want to turn positive vibes into negative vibes in a hurry, start blowing leads. So, and as you mentioned, Neris and Archie Bradley, they, in essence, not only have helped the bullpen, they helped the rotation because their success and the way they both have turned things around and given you some help getting you outs and set up role allowed you to move Ranger to the rotation. I still think he's pitched, solidly in his first 2 starts. And I still think he will end up being a contributor in that rotation. I like the move. But I don't, I do think the Kennedy acquisition was only part of that move, moving Ranger out of the bullpen into rotation. I think equally as important was Archie Bradley's emergence because it gave you another contributor out there, and also Hector turned things around once he got out of the closer role.
This move for Ranger Suarez to the rotation, do you see this as like a long-term thing? Or like the Phillies obviously needed rotation help in the near future here, and that's why they moved Suarez from closer to starter. But I mean, does that to you spell out that they view him as a starter in the future?
I think they've always viewed him as a starter. He was groomed as a starter in the minor leagues, had success, came to the majors, had that good year a couple of years ago out of the bullpen. But that was the role that was sort of available then. I think as long as he's been in the Phillies uniform, they have envisioned him as a starting pitcher. Like I said, groomed that way, has the depth of pitches to do it, aspires personally to do it. You usually move a guy to the bullpen who's been a starter when he kind of exhausts his starting pitching opportunities, and I still think his are all pretty much in front of him. He can kind of determine, he's in the driver's seat in terms of how good a starter he can be in the major leagues. If he doesn't succeed at it, bullpen becomes a fallback. But yeah, I think he's always been viewed as a starter. I think he's there now. I think he's where he belongs, and I think their mindset is he's part of their rotation in 2022. I mean, he last 2020 spring training 2020. Forget who was battling for the fifth starter's job. It was right before the shutdown, but he was making a big kick to win that fifth starter's job. He was right in the thick of it, and then he got COVID, and in 2020 became a lost season. But he was a seldom mentioned fifth starter candidate who might have been pitching better than any of the other fifth starter candidates. So this could help them in the present, and it could help them in the future. I think, especially being left-handed, they've had trouble. There was a couple of years ago when they didn't have a left-handed starter for a couple seasons. So I look at him as that's where his future lies until basically he dictates otherwise.
Jim, the Phillies finished the season with 30 of their final 44 games against teams that have losing records, and not just losing records, but really bad records. I mean, I'm talking about teams like the Diamondbacks and Rockies and Pirates and Marlins and the Cubs, who were just like a shell of the team they were pre-deadline. But these next two series, pretty challenging. You have the Dodgers coming to town for 3, followed by the Reds for 3 games. The Reds lead the majors in runs scored and OPS since the All-Star break. They have 2 guys who are absolutely on fire, Joey Votto and Jonathan India, who looks like the NL Rookie of the Year. And the Dodgers, obviously, the defending champions, a great team, deep roster. Phils are catching the Dodgers at an interesting time, though, because it's Max Scherzer in game 1, but it looks like the final 2 games of that series could be like mostly bullpen games for the Dodgers. David Price, who's been serving as more of a short-term opener, pitches Wednesday, and it could be Julio Urias on Thursday. But the Dodgers are kind of in a similar spot to the Phillies, where they really only have like 4 starters right now. So, interesting time to be catching the Dodgers with an 8-game winning streak. It's a big, to end this homestand for the Phillies, pretty important as they go into that thin portion of the schedule.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the Reds. I love Joey Votto. I love watching him play. Love watching his plate appearances. And he, as you mentioned, he's been on fire. India, I saw India play at University of Florida. I went over to do a story on AJ Puck, the left-hander who the Phillies were considering in that, I guess it was the 2016 draft when they took Mickey Moniak. But anyway, I drove over there one day from Clearwater, and India was like this, he was the first guy. When you walked out of that ballpark, he was the guy you said, oh, wow, he's terrific. And then Winker's having that great season. Suarez dangerous. So, yeah, they can really light it up offensively. And, Tuesday night, you mentioned the Dodgers. To me, they're built for back-to-back World Series. And they're a great team. And you're going to see Max Scherzer. We thought we were done with Max Scherzer. He's made 3 starts against the Phillies this year. He's beaten them in all 3. He's only allowed 3 runs and 18 2/3 in those starts. He's 14-4 lifetime in 24 starts against the Phillies. So he's going to be a tough customer to deal with in game 1. And game 1 of the series is always important, but just as important as facing Scherzer is they need a good one from Aaron Nola.
Yeah.
Wheeler's been totally stepping up. We mentioned Harper's becoming an MVP candidate basically since the All-Star break. I mean, really since June 30th, he's been on fire. But they really, if you want to talk about a difference maker, potential difference maker, to go along with the guys you mentioned in the back of the bullpen, to go along with Wheeler, to go along with the way the offense has been clicking since the break and even a little bit before, Aaron Nola really needs to be that guy for the Phillies. And I know deep down inside how bad he wants it. He just needs to go out and pitch his game. And I think he can be that difference maker.
Yeah, Nola in his most recent start, it was against a pretty poor Nationals lineup, and he didn't pitch well. It was 5 runs over 5 innings. The Phillies came back to win that game, so it didn't really factor into the result too much. But 4.49 ERA as he goes into this start. Big final 10 starts for him. He has a teammate in Zach Wheeler who, as we talked about, is kind of pushing toward that NL Cy Young. In fact, over at PointsBet, Wheeler is now the new Cy Young favorite at plus 190, meaning a $10 bet would pay out 19. Walker Buehler, who the Phillies will miss in this Dodger series, is next. So really good vibes around the Phillies right now. They keep winning. They have a couple of players who could win awards in Harper and Wheeler. Thanks for listening to this Phillies Talk podcast. I'm Corey Seidman. He's Jim Salisbury. Talk to you later in the week.